Every new down in Newville liked Hanukkah a lot, but the Kvetch, who lived just north of Newville, did not. The Kvetch despised Hanukkah the whole holiday season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his Keppy wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his Gotkies were tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his Gotkies, he stood there Erev Chanukah, even hating the Latkes, staring down at the news with a sour, Kvetchy frown, at the warm-lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every new down in Newville that night was busy preparing their festival lights. "They're readying their menorahs," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow night is Hanukkah. It's practically here." Then he growled, with his Kvetch fingers nervously drumming, "I must find a way to stop Hanukkah from coming." For the next night he knew the new Boichiks and Meydels would clamor around as they all spun their Dreidels. Then they'd open their toys. Oy, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. Then the news, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on new Latkes and rare Flanken beast, which was something the Kvetch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every new down in Newville, the tall and the small, would stand close together in the candlelit glow. They'd stand hand in hand and start singing low. Then the singing would grow, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Kvetch thought of this new Hanukkah sing, the more the Kvetch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Hanukkah from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Kvetch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do. The Kvetch laughed in his throat, and he made a Macabee Soldier hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked with great Kvetchy glee. With this hat and this coat, I look just like Judah Macabee. All I need is a ride. The Kvetch looked around, but on top of his mountain no camels were found. Did that stop the old Kvetch? No. The Kvetch simply said, if I can't find a camel, I'll just make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some brown packs and fashioned a big hump upon Max's back. Then he loaded Max up with some old empty sacks. He climbed on his back, and the Kvetch said, "Get up!" And poor Max started down toward the homes where the news lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the news were all dreaming sweet dreams without care when they came to the first little house on the square. "This is stop number 1, the old Judah Kvetch hissed, and he climbed in a window, empty bags in his fist. Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant, around the whole room, and he took every present. Barbies and bicycle, Stars of David and drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Kvetch stopped and knelt to find every last bit of Hanukkah gelt. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the news feast. He took the new potatoes. He took the Flanken beast. He cleaned pantry and icebox as slick as an eel. Why, that Kvetch took every last crumb of matzah meal. He threw food out the window as he danced a quick hora. And now kvelled the Kvetch for the electric menorah. The Kvetch grabbed the menorah without so much as a word, when he heard a small sound, like the coo of a bird. He turned around fast, and he saw a small new, little Sheinachaya new, who was not more than 2. The Kvetch had been caught by this tiny new daughter, who'd gotten up from her shluff for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Kvetch and said, Judah Maccabee, why? Why are you taking our menorah? Oh, why? But you know, that old Kvetch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little Meydel, the fake Maccabee lied. There's a bulb on this menorah that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it to an electrician, my dear. He'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Sheinachaya knew went to bed with a pout, he went to the window and threw the menorah out. Then the last thing he took was the oil for their flame, and he went out the window the way that he came. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other news houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other news mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the news still a nap, all the news still a snooze when he packed up poor Max. Packed him up with their presents, their dreidels, their wrappings, their gelt and their food, all the trimmings and trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, Max schlepped the large load to the tip-top to dump it. But it's been a long night, the Kvetch thought with a yawn. After all, he'd been working right up until dawn. Pooh-pooh to the news he was Kvetchishly humming. They'll all soon find out that no Chanukah is coming. Then he climbed in his cave for a short Kvetchy snooze, planning on waking when the news learned the news. But he slept through the day and on until dusk, then awoke with a jolt, and he cried out, I must see what all of those news now will do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the news down in Newville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, quelled the Kvetch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Kvetch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded gay. It couldn't be so, but it was gay. Oy vey! He stared down at Newville. The Kvetch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every new down in Newville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Chanukah from coming. It came. Somehow or other it came, just the same. And the Kvetch, with his Kvetch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without candles. It came without oil. It came without Flanken beast wrapped up in foil. And he puzzled and puzzled as the news sang Mautzor. Then the Kvetch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Chanukah, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Chanukah, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Newville they say that the Kvetch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he packed Max with his load in the brightest starlight. He brought the news back, their food, toys, and gelt, and Kenahora, the Kvetch, he himself, the Kvetch, lit the menorah.